Hi, everybody, and welcome in. My name is Lucas Donato, and I'm on the marketing team here at Autodesk for media and entertainment. And as people are joining in, please say hi in the chat and let us know where you're joining from. And I'd like to welcome you all to our last session of the Autodesk Game Developer Series. And throughout the last 2 days, we've had a really exciting lineup of talks on AI and 3D workflows for game dev. And in our sessions, you'll learn new techniques from industry pros, and you got to go behind the scenes on real game projects. And for our last session of this virtual event, we have building a production-aware editing pipeline for game cinematics with Flow Production Tracking with our guest, Singbom Jin, lead cinematic artist at Nexon Games. In this talk, you'll learn how Nexon uses a round-trip editing pipeline that connects Unreal Engine, Premiere Pro, and Flow Production Tracking into a seamless production loop for their game cinematics work. And before I introduce or hand it off to Singbom to say a quick hello, there will be time for Q&A at the end of this presentation. English is also not his first language, so the actual presentation itself will be a pre-recorded, clip that you guys will be able to watch, and then we'll be tuning in live for the Q&A right at the end. So please, during the presentation, please drop in your questions in the chat and the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, so we can get to all those questions at the end. We will. And the last thing to note too, as well, is the fact that all of these sessions are recorded. So we'll be sending to all the sessions from the last 2 days to your inbox and post it on our YouTube channel. That's everything from me, and I'll let Singbom say a quick hello before we hop onto the presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Singbom Jin, a lead cinematic artist at Nexon Games. For nearly 20 years making game cinematics, I have always asked myself, how can we create higher quality videos more efficiently? Today, I want to talk about how we approach that question from the perspective of video editing, a pipeline where edit data and team communication flow together in real time. Let's dive into how we built this flow.
Okay, before we get started, I'd like to share something that happened on our team. I remember Kim in my team, who is an animator, came to me and said, Singbom, I poured everything I had into 5 seconds of animation. It took me more than 40 hours to create. But in the end, only 1 second made it into the actual edit. What's up with that? A moment like that, I remember of a line from a Forrest Gump. Life is a box of chocolate. You never know what you're gonna get. He didn't laugh. Not at all. I was just trying to lighten the mood, but that was a moment it really hit me. They were giving their best effort without knowing what would remain that in the actual edit. The realization is where today's talk begins. But first, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Singbom. I've spent over 18 years in game cinematic, and I'm currently with Nexon Games. I've worked on titles like Lost Ark and Metro Complete, and I'm now part of the first Descendant team, where I served as Deputy Department Manager in the Art Division for Cinematic Direction. The first Descendant, defined by high-quality visual and dynamic action set in a sci-fi universe. That level of visual ambition made our cinematic scenes heavier and more complex, and eventually pushed us to rethink our editing pipeline. Editing is more important than most people think, especially in game cinematics. It's not just post-process, it creates rhythm, emotion, and narrative. And even a few frames can change something boring into something interesting. That's why I believe editing should be treated as a core process in game cinematic production. This led me to ask how we can build a sharper, more efficient editing workflow fully integrated into our pipeline. In the past, editing came at the very end of the production pipeline. It was mainly used to assemble and polish the final result after editing was already created. But today, things have changed. In modern filmmaking and game cinematics, editing now begins much earlier. Starting in the previous stage, editing is no longer the final step. It now guides production from the very beginning. What used to be a linear process has become an iterative blueprint, becoming the system that connects and drives the entire pipeline. The problem is that a new engine is simply too heavy for the kind of critical design work. Creating and adjusted soundtrack timing while testing shot rhythm inside Unreal was almost impossible. So we made a decision. We moved the edit to an external editing tool, Premiere Pro, and suddenly editing becomes much easier. And we could editing faster, test different rhythm and pacing, and even work with music and sound much more comfortably. It felt like a perfect solution. But the moment we stepped outside the engine, the data disconnection began. And that disconnect has real consequences. Say an editor changes the timing of a cut or reorder a sequence in the editing tool. If those changes aren't communicated back to Unreal in real time, the artist building assets against the Unreal sequencer have no way of knowing what's changed. The result, animation is keyed to the wrong frames, and lighting is applied to cuts that have already been deleted. All of it wasted. That was a real problem. Our pipeline felt like a chocolate box, unpredictable, disconnected. So the real question became, how do we open the box and manage what flows out of it? Before we go any further, let me quickly align on a couple of terms so rest of this story makes sense. It's basic thing. The master sequence is the timeline that holds the entire cinematic, and the subsequences are the individual shots inside it. But for the pipeline I'm about to introduce, these shots need to circulate continuously. To make that circulation is real, the first challenge we had to solve was how we render our shots. We want to build a circulation structure, a system where video resources could move quickly between Unreal and Premiere. But how would you render that video? Honestly, many of us, including my past self, were doing this the hard way. Are you still opening the legacy renderer, selecting dozens of shots manually, and rendering them one by one? Or maybe you take the lazy route, rendering the entire master sequence as one long file, bring it into Premiere, and cut it apart again manually. Both methods work, but both completely break the circulation. Neither method really support updates. If just one shot changes in Unreal, someone still has to track it down, re-render it, rename it properly, and manually update the media in Premiere. It's slow, it's easy to make mistakes, and it creates a lot of unnecessary work. What we truly need was simple, a system that updates automatically the moment a change happens. Now let's talk about immutable address system. It sounds complicated, but the idea is very simple. We need a fixed address for every shot. To build this structure, we used MRQ, movie render queues token system. When rendering, we add the shot name token to both the output folder and the file name. That's it. Now every shot automatically creates its own folder and its own file name using its shot name. What does this matter? Once every shot has a fixed address, the connection never breaks. Even if a shot changes, I'll simply render it again. The new version goes to the same location and replaces the previous one. Simple rule becomes the foundation of our entire data connection. Here's the key idea. Artists need to see the final edited frame, but editors still need extra handle frames to keep adjusting timing in Premiere. Shots are constantly being trimmed, extended, and rearranged. That flexibility is essential. But so how do we support both needs at the same time? We use two different masters. The source master keeps the full shots, including extra frame for editing. The edit master sends the latest editorial timing back into Unreal. This way, editor keeps their freedom to refine the cut, and artists always see the concept up-to-date result. That's the real power of the dual master structure. Now, the dual master structure and the fixed address system are placed. We are finally ready to render our video results and export the XML. You can see that as you can see, most of the setup is already prepared for rendering. I prepared using the MP4 encoder render. As mentioned earlier, we used the shot name token, automatically organized the folder and structure. Here it is. As you can see here, here's the key things to remember. This render is for editing, not for final quality, so we remove the heavy setting. We turn off the feature like anti-aliasing and ray tracing because our goal is simple. We want a fast render for review and rendering. Next, we add the XML export. You may not realize it yet, but this file will become the bridge that connects Premiere editing data with Unreal. Once that's added, everything is ready. And now, we start to render and then move straight into Premiere. Now we step into Premiere, bring along the rendered footage and the XML from Unreal. This is the moment where things start to feel surprisingly easy. Instead of importing and placing just a clip by hand, we simply bring it into XML because that XML already carries the entire sequencer structure with it. We just import the XML, what we exported. Here's the resource and import the XML. Yeah, here. With one import and quick media read link, Premiere rebuilt the full sequence exactly as it existed in Unreal. Timing, cuts, everything. Sometimes Premiere hesitates and can't find the file right away. That's normal. When the link media windows appear, we just turn off the file extension option and point Premiere to the first file in the correct parent folder. From there, Premiere does rest, intelligently reconnect every remaining shot. And just like that, everything rendered click falls perfectly into place, preserving that exact timing. Now the XML and footage are fully inside Premiere. From this point, it becomes the editor's playground. Editors can freely trim shot, adjust timing, and experiment with pacing. They can move shot around quickly without the heavy frame drop we experienced in Unreal. This is where rhythm and emotion truly begin to take shape. With the lighter tool, we can freely layer sound, effect, and background music, and dial in audio sync with real precision. Now we need to bring this edit back into Unreal. So we export the Premiere timeline as an XML file. You hear the edit done. You can export with the XML. Here, it's simple. Export the XML file. Here like that, and enter the name and export that. Yeah, here you may see running about missing audio or unmatched resources. That's okay. All we needed at this stage is the cut timing data. Back in Unreal, we'll leave the resource master untouched. Instead, we open a new edit master sequencer, import the XML here. And just like that, the first loop is completed. The cut timing and sequencer order from the Premiere are faithfully rebuilt on the Unreal timeline. If we also upload the background music and sound effects to the audio tracks, the benefits grow even further. Artists now have clear context and precise sync point, far beyond what video alone could provide. This shows how the process works. Results start in Resource Master in Unreal and move into Premiere, where the editing takes place. When the edit is finished, the updates edit return to the Unreal and updates in the edit master. If a single shot is modified in Unreal, we'll render only that shot through MRQ, and Premiere automatically updates it. And editor can then continue working with the updated shot in Premiere. When the edit changes again, we export the XML and update the edit master, and the master sequence reflects the new edit. This loop continues as resource and edit keep updating each other. Up to this point, the edit has always started in Premiere. Every change is begun there and flows back into Unreal. But as production moves into the later stage, speed becomes critical. Sometimes changes need to happen instantly inside Unreal. So new question emerged. Does the edit always have to start in Premiere? What if we need immediate changes directly in Unreal? Is there a way for that added to flow back to Premiere instead, that is the moment direction began to revert. When the edit must start from the edit master itself, when the XML and the edit flow needs to travel backwards. And this question leads us to single master mode. Up to this point, when the XML and the edit flow needs to travel backward. And this question leads us to single master mode. Now imagine we make editorial changes directly inside the edit master. We just adjusting cut lengths, move shots, or changing the pacing of the sequence. To keep the loop going, we need to bring this updated edit back into Premiere. So we export the XML from Unreal and import it into Premiere. And remember, exporting XML is not tied to rendering. We can export it directly from the sequencer anytime we need. But when we import this XML into Premiere, the situation is different this time. Something unexpected happens. Now we have a new problem. I call this moment the disconnect. At the top, Unreal has the updated sequence. At the bottom, Premiere has the edited timeline, but now they no longer match. Why? Because the shot names changed. Unreal add suffix names like parentheses 1, 2, 3. Avoid name conflict. Premiere reads the XML, try to and find those files. But when the name doesn't match perfectly, Premiere shows this warning, missing media. This is a very important moment in the pipeline. The edit exists, the render exists, but Premiere cannot connect them, so editing loop suddenly stops. The small naming difference creates a big disconnect between Unreal and Premiere. And now we must solve this problem, continues the loop. Let me explain this a very simple way. This slide shows how we create Basecamp version 2 to complete the editing loop. First thing, the edit changes in Premiere. Some shots are cut shorter, reused, or duplicated. Because of that, Unreal automatically adds a number like parentheses 1 or 2 or 3 to the shot names. Now the names in Premiere and the names in Unreal are slightly different. Premiere lists the XML and looking for the file with this new name, but the old folder structure does not match anymore. So what do? We create a new Basecamp. This new Basecamp is clean folder structure that includes all updated shot name from the edit master. Now the name is in Unreal. The XML and Premiere all match it. When everything matches, the loop works again. Premiere finds the correct files. Unreal updates the correct shot, but the suffix names can still create a small problem when we send the edit back to Unreal. And that becomes our next challenges. Parenthesis 1, with the new Basecamp strategies, we successfully brought the parenthesis 1 suffix files into Premiere. Everything looks correct in the timeline, but remember, our goal is circulation. The edit must travel back to Unreal, and this is where the problem begins. when we open the XML that goes back to Unreal, we see the parenthesis 1 suffix in the file names. These suffixes were added only during export to avoid file name conflict. They were never real Unreal asset name. Inside Unreal level sequence, there are no subsequences with parenthesis 1 in their names. So when this XML returns to Unreal, Unreal cannot match the real shots. It creates dummy tracks instead. Because of this tiny naming difference, the edit cannot flow back into Unreal, and the circulation of pipeline breaks. So how do we solve this problem? We built a tiny script. We called it the name cleaner. This script runs automatically when the XML returns to Unreal, and its job is simple. It removes the extra suffix. For example, shot 01 number 1, it goes to shot 01. Shot 01 underbar 000 becomes shot 01. It simply cleans the names and removes the label crest during export, and once the names are clean again, Unreal can instantly find the original set, the shot reconnected. The timeline reveals correctly with this small script. The circulation is restored. Let's see it in action. We export the parenthesis 1. Yeah, here's the parenthesis 1 clip and suffix edited from Premiere as an XML and bring it back to Unreal. Yeah, we import the XML here, and there it is. The edit reconnects perfectly. The names are different, but the result is identical. Up to this, the data circulation is finally completed. With the fixed path system, the single master workflow, and the name cleaner script, we finally completed the editing circulation. Unreal now always finds the correct asset. Manually renaming is gone. Manual track fixing is gone. The data is finally connected, but the data flow alone is not enough. When the edit changes, production specs are, and shot information changes too. And we used to update all of this manually. So next question becomes simple. How do we manage not just the flow of the data, but flow of people and work? Now we need to shift our focus. Until now, we've been solving the technical editing loop. But the real challenge was communication. Every edit changes affect shot counts, duration, and production specs. So we asked a bigger question. Can editing changes automatically update production data and reach artists instantly? And the last piece of the puzzle was LPTR. It's currently in verification stage. We successfully tested it on a trailer project, and we are now preparing to roll it out across the entire team. Now let's look at how data moves into a Flow PTR. The process is simple. First, we export the short data from Unreal as a CSV file. Next, our step tool validate the data and send it to LPT. And shot and task are then created automatically. After artists are assigned, the production environment is ready for them to begin work. In past, we built a shot list manually in Excel. Now, the entire process is fully automated. Let me see the short demo of how production data moves into production tracking. First, we export the master sequencer from the Unreal as a CSV file. Next, the setup tool validates the data and uploads it to Flow PTR tracking. Then, the data appears automatically inside FPTR from this screen. We assign artist each task and updated the status, priority, and difficulty. At this point, the production workflow is ready to begin. First, we export the data from the Unreal subsequences. This includes shot names, order, duration, character, animation name, and used frame. Then, this data moves into FPTR. Here's how the mapping works. Subsequence name, it goes to shot name. Each subsequence becomes a shot, so shot counts are generated automatically. So shot position, it goes to cut in and cut out. We read where the shot sits in the master sequence and how long it lasts. Shot order and duration are created automatically. Scatter match track name goes to animation task. Character names are read from the shot. Each character automatically becomes an animation task. Animation sequence name, it goes to animation resource. Artists instantly see which animation they need to work on. Used frame, it goes to work range. The motion capture animation sequences used during editing are often too long, but artists only need to work on a specific portion. Now, they know exactly which frame to work on. On the right, the blue label and yellow label shows the detailed task step in their status. We can quickly see what is finished and what is still in progress, giving us a clear view of the overall production flow. Most importantly, artists no longer need to enter information manually. Editing data becomes production data automatically. Inside production tracking, artists can see task, priority, asset, and the full pipeline at a glance. They understand not only what to do, but where their works fit in the whole sequence, and that context helps them work faster and more proactively. Today, we connected two critical loops. The first is the editing data loop between Unreal and Premiere. The second is production communication loop through FPTR. When these two loops connected, the entire production environment becomes circulated. When an editor changes a shot, the updated timing and duration are pushed back into Unreal. At the same time, that changes reflects in Pro Production Tracking as updated production specs. Finally, let me return to the chocolate box. On the past, the box was closed. We didn't know what was inside. Now it's open. Data flows through the pipeline, and teams understand each other's intentions. We didn't build this system just to improve technical quality. We built it so creative intention can circulate freely. An editor's intent flows to the artist, and artist's work flows back into the edit as inspiration. When communication moves in both directions, true quality becomes possible. So, open the box. Let data and context flow and focus on truly matters, telling better story. Thank you very much for your time and attention. This concludes my presentation. We will now move directly into the Q&A session, and I'm looking forward to meeting you again there shortly.
Great. Thank you for that, Singbom. It was really, really good. And thank you both so much for sharing with us more about your workflow and that production loop that you were talking about. So now we have time for questions. So if anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Also, because of the language barrier as well, too, we do actually have a translator with us who will help interpret any of your questions as well, too, to make sure we're able to answer all of them properly. But I will start off. I have actually a question for you, Singbom. First off, you highlighted Flow Production Tracking as the core of the pipeline. So what's its biggest advantage over Excel or any maybe in-house tools for game asset and production management?
제 발표에서 이게 봤듯이 FPTR이 에셋이나 샷, 태스크 그리고 리뷰를 하나의 중앙화된 시스템에서 관리하기 때문에 게임 에셋 관리에도 매우 효과적이었어요. 이거를 엑셀이나 다른 분산된 툴로 작업을 추적하는 대신에 팀이 한꺼번에 프로젝트 전반에 걸쳐서 에셋 상태나 버전이나 의존 관계를 실시간으로 이게 확인할 수가 있는 게 제일 장점이죠. 그리고 언리얼이나 마야 같은 뭐 다른 맥스 이런 툴들과 직접 연동되기 때문에 아티스트들이 기존 작업 환경에서 멀리 벗어나지 않고도 바로 프로덕션 데이터가 자동으로 업데이트되는 게 가장 큰 장점이었습니다.
So the biggest advantage of PTR is with the easiness we can manage the assets. Instead of managing assets in the distributed tools, through FPTR, we could see the entire asset throughout the project with clarity regarding versions and dependencies. And the tool is also clearly linked and integrated with Unreal and Maya and Max. So artists do not need to walk away from the environment they're working in and directly use the production data, and the production data update is automatically done. Those are the biggest advantages.
Great. Thank you both for that answer. Next question. So it seems like both dual master and single master modes have their own pros and cons. Is it possible to combine the two approaches?
네, 이것도 있죠. 이게 다른 한 가지 방법이 있는데 이게 뭐냐면은 개별식 서브 시퀀서들을 한꺼번에 무비 렌더 큐에 등록해서 바로바로 렌더를 하는 방식이 있어요. 근데 이렇게 하면 듀얼 마스터의 소스가 변하지 않는 불변성과 싱글 마스터의 이게 바로바로 소통되는 양방향 소통성을 둘 다 취할 수가 있는데 다만 이게 서브 시퀀서 안에서 이게 렌더 영역이 만약에 변경이 된다면은 렌더링이 시작되는 지점도 이렇게 바뀌어버리기 때문에 프리미어에서 영상 흐름을 편집하는 바로 영상 흐름이 바뀌어버리고 그래서 제가 원했던 이게 계속적으로 이어지는 순환이 깨어질 수가 있었어요. 그래서 이 발표에는 다루지 않았던 거고 이거 서브 시퀀서에는 많은 리소스 작업자들이 추가적으로 들어와서 작업을 하기 때문에 렌더 영역이 변경돼 버리기 쉬워요. 이런 위험성이 있어서 발표에는 따로 다루지를 않았어요.
Yes, another way is to use movie renders queue to have the development server sequence and the render work together at the same time. But it can affect the immutability of dual master, and the single master can also have the circulation in both directions. But it has the risk of changing the rendering area, the starting point of the rendering inside the subsequencer. So it will change the flow of the video or the footage that is being edited inside the Premiere. So it can break the continuous round trip or circulation that I wanted to secure. So that is why I did not talk about it extensively in the presentation. And because Subsequencer is worked on by many different artists and many different resource artists, so the render array area can be modified quite easily. So that is why we didn't take that approach.
Great. Thank you, Chloe. And we have a question I see from the audience. So this pipeline looks incredibly cohesive. How long did it take your team to fully adopt it? And what were the biggest challenges in onboarding artists, editors, or departments to this workflow?
네, 이 파이프라인은 굉장히 강력한 연계성을 가지고 있는 것으로 보이는데요. 이 접근법을 채택을 하는데 시간이 어느 정도 소요가 되셨는지, 그리고 다양한 아티스트와 작업자들과 뭐 에디터들이, 그리고 다양한 부서에서 이것을 도입하는데 가장 까다로웠던 부분은 무엇인지 궁금합니다.
이 파이프라인을 만드는 데는 구상하고 직접적으로 만드는 데는 한 달 정도가 좀 안 됐던 것 같아요. 그리고 이거를 직접적으로 도입하는 거는 어떤 편집자들은 프리미어를 쓰지 않는 편집자들도 있고, 어떤 편집자들은 프리미어 대신에 이게 에펙이나 다른 걸로 편집을 하는 편집자들이 있어서 그거를 다시 프리미어로 돌려서 한 단계를 거치는 것들도 좀 약간 거부감이 있었고, 그리고 엑셀로 보는 것들을 좀 더 편하게 느끼는 제작 리소스 아티스트들도 있었는데, 점차적으로 이거 FPTR에 더 여러 편의 기능들을 소개하면서 이 시스템 쪽으로 좀 더 끌고 들어오는데 도움이 됐던 것 같아요.
So it took less than a month for us to conceptualize and put together this pipeline. But in terms of adoption, some editors were not using Premiere. They were using other tools like AppTag, and it involved extra step of moving those editors to Premiere, and that involved a little bit of difficulty. And some artists, production resource artists were accustomed to and finding it more easier to see things in an Excel sheet. But as we propagated how convenient FTPR is, how different features and capabilities are available, they were easily onboarded and adopted this approach quite easily.
Great. Thank you both for the question and the answer as well. I have another question as well. So this person asked, you mentioned that you have to use a Python script to remove iterators and names. Is this because the auto versioning option is enabled in the MRQ settings? If so, why don't you disable it?
네, MRQ 세팅에서 오토 버저닝이 이제 켜져 있어서 파이썬 스크립트를 사용을 해서 이제 명령이나 아니면 이터레이션 제거하는 것을 이제 하셨는데요. 그렇다면은 이 MRQ에서 자동으로 버전 컨트롤하는 그 기능을 끄시면 되지 않았나라는 생각이 드는데 어떠실까요?
다시 잠깐만 그 질문이 잠깐 얘기 안 됐는데 MRQ에서 다시 한번 말씀해 주실래요?
네, MRQ에서 그 자동으로 버전 컨트롤하는 기능이 아마 켜져 있으셔서 문제가 발생을 해서 파이썬 스크립트로 해소를 하신 것 같습니다. 근데 그 기능을 끄셔도 되지 않았을까라는 생각이 들어서 질문 여쭙습니다.
MRQ에서 버전 컨트롤에서 I didn't know that. 그런 버전 컨트롤을 할 수 있는 거는 저도 몰랐네요. 좋은 지적 감사합니다.
Yes, I wasn't aware there is a feature that can enable and disable for automatic version control, and thank you for that input.
Nice. That's a fun little interaction, I guess, between the audience and the speaker. I love that. Thank you for the question. I do have another question as well. So what was the biggest bottleneck in your cinematic pipeline before you implemented this round-trip workflow?
네, 새로운 이제 라운드트립 워크플로우를 도입하기 전에 시네마틱 에디팅에서 가장 큰 병목이 무엇이었을까요?
이거에 들어오기 전에 가장 큰 병력은 아무래도 리소스 아티스트들이 대기하는 시간이었죠. 이게 프리뷰 편집이 어느 정도 확정되지 않으면은 리소스 아티스트들이 샷을 시작할 수가 없었는데 오늘 보여드린 이게 편집 플로우를 통해서 편집을 픽스하는 속도를 높였고 또 아티스트들이 그걸 대응해서 더 빠르게 아티스트들한테 더 빠르고 확실한 제작 시트를 제공해가지고 바로 지연 없이 샷 세팅을 가능해지고 그거의 제작 속도를 더 높일 수가 있었어요.
Yes, the biggest bottleneck must have been the wait time for the resource artists. If the previous edit wasn't finalized, resource artists couldn't even begin to work on shots. So with the approach that I demonstrated today, we could speed up the process of confirming and finalizing edits, and artists could start to work on the production sheets we provide with greater speed faster. So it brought up the production speed and accelerated it much more.
Great, thank you. I do have another question as well. So how does Flow Production Tracking transform edit decisions into structured production data?
네, 이 FPT가 에딧을 좀 더 구조화된 데이터로 어떻게 전환을 해주는지 궁금합니다.
그거는 일단 핵심이 언리얼의 마스터 시퀀스를 모든 데이터의 종착지로 만드는 거고 그걸 하려면 아까 발표에서 말씀드렸듯이 프리미어에서 결정된 컷 타이밍이나 사용된 캐릭터들을 그리고 애니메이션 구간 이런 것들이 잘려가지고 모든 그 각 개별 시퀀서들의 확정이 되는 게 완료가 되면은 그거에 대해 확정된 데이터들을 아까 보여드린 발표 내용대로 그 셋업 툴로 출출해서 플로우 PTR로 넘어가고 그 데이터들을 제작 시트 형태로 보기 쉽게 나열해서 다른 작업자들이 컨텍스트를 파악하고 작업을 할 수 있게 하는 게 이 목적이었습니다.
So the key to make Unreal Master Sequencer is to make the Unreal Master Sequencer the final destination for all data. So once the cut timing and characters used and animation segments confirmed or finalized in Premiere, once they enter the engine, they are marked finalized as the final edit and in a setup tool. And this data was conveniently provided to other production resource artists in a data production sheets. So this expedited the entire process. So all the artists were aware of the context and work on the resources with greater speed.
Nice, thank you. I'll do a last call as well too for any more questions from the audience. And in the meantime, while we wait for any last questions to come through, I do want to say a really big thank you to Singbom for joining us, for Chloe for your help interpreting, on the language side. I think this presentation was really, really fun to hear and really cool to see the workflow that you came up with and really had to work on to kind of fix that problem that you had at your studio. And overall, for everyone joining in, huge thank you as well for your questions, your engagement, and also to not just in this session, but all the others that we have had over the previous 2 days. It's been a pleasure hosting you. I feel like it's been a lot of fun, and we've had a lot of really cool talks, and I hope you've all had a chance to learn something from our great speakers and take something away into your own game projects.